Hello and welcome to another video. I recently found a site where you can practice making React components. It's actually pretty cool, and I'll link it in the description. So essentially there's a bunch of questions where they tell you to make a React component, and then you can try it, and it has like a browser that you can see what it looks like, and you can see what it's supposed to look like. So in this problem, we're going to be making an accordion. So you have to build an accordion component that displays a list of vertically stacked sections that each contain a title and content. There's some stuff provided for us. All sections are collapsed and hidden, and clicking on a section should toggle it, so it should like open it and close it. And the sections are independent. We can try out an example, and they have notes, so don't spend too much time writing custom CSS, mostly just functionality. Modify the markup if you want to, and think of the ways you can improve it. So if you actually click on this, see what you're building, they let you see what it's supposed to look like. So essentially for like HTML, you're supposed to be able to click on it, and then some kind of stuff comes out. And you can do that for all of these. And then if you click on it again, then it goes away. So this is like a default accordion. We're going to have this open just to see what it's going to look like. And here is what we have so far. So right now, everything is just showing, and we want it to be able to hide it. So the first thing, if we take a look at this actual accordion file, we can look at it and see kind of what's going on. So they have a bunch of divs, and in each div, there's an HTML. So this just means it's just going to write HTML with a space after it. And the reason with a space, like if we get rid of this, we can take a look what it looks like. It just basically makes, there's a space between the icon and the HTML. And then in this span, there is a icon. So like if we get rid of the span, for example, if we delete it, that's the icon, and has a class name accordion icon. And then there's a div with the actual text. So once again, if we just like comment it out or something, we can see that, or actually, let's just do this. We can see that the text goes away. So in the div, there's a text. So essentially, we want to do something like if they click up here, we want this to go away and appear and so on. And so there's a bunch of these. So the first thing we want to figure out, and then this app also calls the accordion. The first thing we want to figure out is like, how do we want to do this? And then how do we actually want to structure it to make a reusable component? So that's the other key is you want to try to make reusable components. Because let's say I have something like this, like I could just code in here, right, in this accordion, but then what if I want to make another accordion that's like has some different text? Then I can't reuse this accordion. So ideally what you want to have is you want to have something that takes in data and then uses that data to actually make the accordion. That way in this app, I can just pass in some data into my accordion and I can make a bunch of reusable accordions. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out how to take this accordion, take some kind of data, and then like what state to add and so on, right? So for the data, what kind of things do we want to have? Well, it looks like for every single one of these, you have a title, and then you have like some text. That's like the paragraph of text, right? So that's what we're going to have. We're just going to have a data that's going to be an array of objects, and then every object will just have a title and text. And then in our accordion, we can just map through our objects and make these components. And so it'll be reusable because we can just change our data in the app later on and easily remake these components without having to like hard code all this stuff in, right? So that's going to be the first thing. So let's do that. So we're just going to have some kind of data that we're going to pass into the app. So we can say like const data equals array, and it's going to be an array of objects. So each object will have a title, and in this title, the first one's going to have HTML, and it will also have a text field. So in this case, we can just copy from here. It's going to be this over here. Or we can copy it from here either way. Right. So for the HTML, it's going to be this. So title and a text field. And there we go. Okay, so let's throw that in. Let's see. Something went wrong. Message, something, something, something. Looks like, yeah, I think because it has new lines, so let's fix that. So let's actually just copy it straight out of here, maybe, or is that where we copied it from? Let's see. Does this have new? Okay, this is fine. There we go. So now we have a title and text field. You can obviously write this in multiple lines, but it's not a huge concern. So we're just gonna have 3 of these: a title and a text field. And so for the second one, we're gonna want to have CSS and JavaScript. Okay, now we're going to copy in these actual text fields. So let's copy in this one. And normally you don't have to worry about formatting too much. You can just like, wonder if this actually has it. I don't think it, maybe it does. No, it doesn't. You can just have like an auto formatter format your stuff to like have it not take up whatever, have the lines of code be short. That's not a huge concern. Okay, so now that we have our data where every single object has a title and a text, we're going to pass it into Accordion in a data prop. So we'll say data equals this data. So we're going to pass it in. Now we're actually going to go to our accordion, and for now we just want to just show the data. So we're going to basically show it just like this, and then we'll figure out what things to add. So let's take a look at this. So first of all, we're going to want to pass in the data as a prop. So we'll just say like data in here. And in here, basically what we want to make is we want to turn this data into JSX, and then we can just show the JSX in here. So we'll say like const render data or something equals, and then it's going to be a map. So what you want to do is you want to take your data array and you want to map through each object and actually create a JSX element. So we'll say like data.map. And then what we want to do is we want to take an element and we're going to use an index as well. We're not going to use the index for now, but we're going to add that in later. But for now, we just want to kind of show this exact JSX. So let's just take a look at what each thing has. So I think the div is here, so we can literally just copy in a div here. And we can say return some JSX, and we can just copy in this div and change it to what we want. So this HTML thing should say the title. So we'll just say l.title. And we want it to have a space after, so we can do that by just doing something like this. We can just make a format string. Other ways to do it, but this is one of them. So we're going to take a title, and then we're going to have the space after it. Now this is the picture, which is fine for now. And then this is also the text. So in the text, we're going to want to display the text. So we'll just say like element.text. And I think that's mostly it. So now we should be able to... Oh, so we need one more thing. So when you do this mapping, the other important thing is because you're making an array of objects, you're going to need to have a key. So your outermost div needs to have a key. So you want to look at your data and you want to figure out like what's a good key to use. And so if I take a look at a data, assuming this will move around, you don't want to use the index typically. So let's just say these titles are unique. So we'll just use the title as the key. So we'll say key equals l.title. So we have unique keys now for all of our JSX. And now this will just be an array of JSX objects. So now we should be able to just render it. And we can get rid of everything except for the outermost div, ideally. So let's try that. So now we can just say rendered data. And there we go. So we have it all rendered. So now the next thing we want to figure out is we actually want to be able to click on these things and make them like show and not show. So the other thing is we want to think about how we would do that. Like obviously you can make this clickable, but how do we have it actually, like if a component re-renders, like let's say I click on the CSS, like here, I do this, so this will re-render, and then when I click on this, this shows, but this is still saved. So I need to have some kind of saved state, right? So what does the state need to look like? Well, there's a few ways to do this, but essentially what we can do for our state is we can just have a Boolean saying like, should we show this item or not? And then we can conditionally render these paragraphs. And when we click on it, we can change the state, right? So the state can pretty easily just be like an array of Booleans. And how long should it be? It should be the length of the number of elements. So we can just make a state using this data. And so let's do that. So let's import a useState here. And that's the only state we need here, right? Just what elements we're showing and not showing. Everything else is just static. So we can say import useState from React. And we're going to make a state over here. So we'll say, we'll use it here. So we'll say like const, maybe like show, set show or something. So show, set show, whatever you want to call it, equals useState. And then we want to make an array. So we'll make an array. The length of the array needs to be the length of our data. So we'll say data.length. And we can initially set every value to false, so you can just do a fill with false. And that should work. Okay, so now we have everything false. Now the next thing we want to do is let's just make these paragraphs conditionally render, right? So when the show is false for the paragraph, it shouldn't show. So for example, HTML will be like position 0, and when this is false, then this shouldn't show. So where do we do that? Well, let's take a look. So where are we actually rendering the text? In this div right here. So we can conditionally render this div based on, this is why we're going to use the index. So we're going to say whatever index we're on in the data, let's check if we should show it or not. If it's true, we will show it. If not, let's not. So the way to do that, one of the ways you could do that is you can just say show at the index. If that's true, then we can render the div, so you can just use an and. Like this. Now they are all false, right? Because it's all false. So now the next thing we want to do is, ideally we want to have these things be clickable, right? So we want to be able to click like here on HTML, and then this shows. So when we click on the div up here, this needs to be able to, this needs to say like, okay, let's set the flag for whatever this is to true, right? So if our stuff is like false, 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 when we click on HTML, the one at index 0 should turn into true. So where do we do that? Well, we can do that where we show the title. Also, ideally you don't want to have clickable divs. So instead of a div, you can just have a button. So we can just have a button up here. Yeah, I think that'd be fine. Now, actually, the place you'd probably want to do that is actually not the outermost div, but this div up here, right? The div that shows the title and so on. So I think that's probably the better place to do it. Yeah. And then we can also just show the title in the, yeah, because this will be a button. Yeah, so this will be the better place to do it. So we can, because on the outermost div, you don't want to do it, so we can have a button up here. So we'll have a button. And then for this button, so now we have like a button. For this button, we want to have an on-click. And basically what we want to do in on-click is we want to take the index we're at and set that index to false, right? So we can just make a, we don't want to actually set it to false. We want to set it to the opposite. Like here, like this will be true right now. And if we click on it, then it'll turn to false. So we want it to alternate between true and false. So we can make like a handle click function, but we can just make, because this is such a short function, we can just make a function in here already. We don't need like a handle click. So we can just say like, let's just take the, let's just take an arrow function, and then let's say, so what we want to do is we want to set show. Actually, I think we do want to, I think we would want to, yeah, we would want to make a handle click function just because, yeah, because we have to copy the array. So let's actually take the index we're at. So we'll say index, and then let's call handle click that we're going to make right now on this index. So actually, the other thing we also need to do is, this shouldn't be index, handle click index, because this is like an event. So this would actually pass something else. This would pass an event. So what we want to do is we want to do this. We want to make an arrow function that will just call handle click on this index over here. Not this, yeah, not this. This will be like the on click event, which is what we don't want. So now we can make this function. So we can say const handle click was a function that will take an index. And essentially now, so what we need to do is, we can't just change the field and show. So if you have an array as a state, you have to actually make a copy of the entire array and then change the field, because that's when React knows to re-render. So what we need to do is we need to make a copy. So we'll say like const show copy equals show, we can just make a slice, it's fine. And then we can say show copy at index equals the opposite. So we can say not show copy at index. So if it's false, it's true. If it's true, it's false. And now we can set show at show copy. And it should be good. So let's test it. So yeah, so we do have like the basic accordion now. And the nice thing about this is if we go to this app, like if we have this data, because we're using the data, we can easily like make another data field. So we can call this like data2 with a type of like HTML5, CSS6, and like TypeScript or something, right? You can do whatever you want here with whatever fields, and now you can just make another accordion here. And we don't, because we didn't hard code, it's very easy to make another accordion. So we could do something like this, and then we can make another accordion over here like this. So we can say it's like accordion data equals data2. Let's see here, what's the issue? Oh, we need a, so if you return, you need an outermost div. So div, outermost div, and now we can do this. And now what this allows us to do is we can have like multiple accordions. We can add like a break or something. So now you can see like we can easily pass in whatever divs we want, without having to like hard code this in, right? So it's very convenient. We can even, if you want to go even further, you can make another file with this data that you could like call some API, get this data, put in this format, and then just pass it in here, and that'll be like the cleanest. So we're going to get rid of this again, and we are going to now actually style the rest of this and compare it to this, just so some basic styling. So for one thing, our button has a background of gray, so we want to get rid of that. We want to get rid of the border. We also want to make this HTML and this, like we want to actually make the button extend all the way out here, because you see like this whole thing needs to be clickable. So we want to make it the width of the screen, get rid of the background, get rid of the border, and maybe change some other stuff. So let's go to style. We can just style the button in particular. We can just style the button in particular to have all these things, because there's only one button, so we can just change the button class here, or just the button in general. So what we want is we want a couple things. We want the border to be white, so it blends in, right? Or background, so background color white. So it blends in. Now we want to get rid of the border, so we want to do border none. Now what we want is that these two things are in the button, so we can just display flex them, make it take up the whole screen, and make them be on both sides of the button. So we can extend the width, so we can say width is 100%. Yeah. Then we also want to display flex it, right? So display flex. And now it's clickable, you just can't see it. But now, so now what we want to do is we want to spread these out, so we can just say justify content space between, right? So we have one thing over here, one thing over here. There's only two items, so that goes over there. And then we also want to align items. I don't know if it matters in this case, but usually I just align items everywhere. Yeah, so now it's clickable, so that's all good. So we still want a couple things, right? We want to make the button, when we hover over it, we want it to be a pointer, and we want it to have this gray background. So we can add that in. So we can say button hover. And we want to change the cursor to a pointer. So we should have that now. And then we also want to change the background when we hover over it, so we can make it like light gray or something. Light gray. See if that's good. Close enough. Okay, so this is fine. We could like spread this out more or something, but that's like whatever. So now this is like just like this one. Now there's a couple other things. In this paragraph, you see how like in this one it's like lined up, or kind of. In this paragraph, it's a little to the left. So what we can do is we can go back in here, and where's our div for the paragraph? It's right over here. So we can give it a class name. Not gonna do too much styling, but just some basic stuff. So give it a class name paragraph, and then we can put it over here. So paragraph. And then what we want to do is we want to give it like a margin left, so it's not like out here, right? So we can say margin left, like some kind of pixels. Let's test 10 pixels and see what happens. Okay, so it's not exactly like lined up. I mean, you can do like less. You could do like 5 maybe. 2. Okay, and that's basically lined up. Not quite, but whatever. Let's leave it at 5. Good enough. It's not going to be a styling thing. So we need one more thing, and then I think that's pretty much it. So the thing we want to do is the last thing is there is this like little separator. So you could put like a break in between all of these, but the problem is you see how like there's only 2 for 3 items. So what we're actually going to do is we're just going to put a gray line above all of these, right? So we'll just put a gray line above all of these. And then for the first one, we won't have the gray line. So the way we can do that is we can see how are all of our children defined. So we have this div with rendered data, right? So what we can do is for this div, we can just put the gray line up here. So we can say like class name. Actually, I don't think we need a, do we need it? Let's think. So what we really want to do is we want to, yeah, actually I got it. So what we want to do is we can call this something. We can call this like a section or something. And then what we need to do is for the outermost div, we'll call container. So we'll say class name container. And then essentially for the container, we can display flex all these things. So we can say like container, we can display flex. So this should now go this way. Now we want to make it column. So flex direction column. Okay, there we go. And now what we want to do is for these sections, we want to just give them an upper little gray line here. So we can say section, and then you can just give a border wherever you want. So you can give like border right, border wherever. We're going to do border top, and then we're going to say like 1 pixel solid light gray again or something. Okay, so there we go. We have our sections. Now the thing is, if you notice here, there are only 2 of them. So for this top one, we don't want this line. So the way to do that, because these sections are in the container, you can just say section. Either you can do like nth child or whatever, but because this is the first child, so you can literally do first child, and now this will target that one directly, and you could say border equals none. That should take care of our border, and now we basically have roughly this. Obviously, there's more stuff you can do. You can like change the font and whatever if you want in your paragraph. Like you can make this, you know, font family something like Times New Roman, whatever. Change the, you know. And so there's actually one more thing that we're missing. If you take a look here, when we click on these, this little arrow goes up and ours just goes down. So that's the last thing we need to add. So they actually provided the style for this. So if you look, there's an accordion icon class that makes it normal. And then there's an accordion icon rotated that will take the icon and rotate it up. So essentially, if we go back here, we just need to handle that logic. So we need to basically check, and it's going to be where the icon is, so right here. So what we need to do here is we need to say if our whatever index we're at is shown, then we need to add this accordion icon rotated class. So we could say like set, or not set, show at this index. If this is true, then we need to have both of these classes. So it's going to be like this, and then we also need to have the accordion icon rotated. So accordion, we can just copy it in. So I was testing this earlier, and you basically need to have both of these classes to work for this to work. So we can just, and also if you didn't know, in React, if you want to have multiple classes, you can just put them all in one string and it'll be fine. So now this will have both of these classes. Otherwise, if this is false, then we just want this accordion icon only. Obviously, other ways to handle this, but this is fine. So now, if we click on it, you can see that it does everything. Close enough to this. I mean, obviously, you can do more styling. That's good enough. Yeah, so the main thing to take out of this is when you make components, make sure they're reusable, make sure data is not hard-coded, make sure you separate your concerns. So your accordion shouldn't have hard-coded data. You should be able to pass it in, and that way your user can just make data outside, easily use your component, and you can have some like documentation, like here's how the component works, pass in the data in this format. And now it's very easy to pass in whatever you want, have as many fields as you want. If we wanted like 3 more of these, totally easy, as opposed to if it was hard-coded, then we'd have to figure out like how to do it. And we can't have, the other big thing is if it was hard-coded, we can't have multiple reusable accordions, right? Because it's hard-coded. So it would be super pain, but this is a lot better. Also, obviously, if you want to make this a little bit better, I guess another small thing is you might have the same title actually multiple times. You probably shouldn't in an accordion, but let's say you did. You might want to have like another field in your data called like an ID or something, and then make sure those are all unique or something, because that way your keys need to be unique in React. So, that's some small thing, but those are all like small things. I think we covered the majority of it. So hopefully this is helpful, and I think I would recommend the site to other people. It has a lot of free questions. I've been using it for like front end stuff. It's pretty good, and I think it just got like released recently, and it's by the same people who made the Blend 75. So let me know what you think about it. I'm not like affiliated with them or anything. I just think it's pretty nice. There isn't too much front end stuff to practice, so it's kind of cool where you can have component questions and you can like practice stuff, and you have all this kind of stuff. So yeah, anyways, if you did like this video, please like it. Let me know what you thought about it. Let me know if you want me to make more of these in the future. Yeah, and that's all. Thanks for watching.